Welcome back, my fellow Warcraft 3 grognards. I am still here, and I am still doing the world-building videos and such. It's not going to be all Let's Plays from now on, although I must admit it's very tempting to just go on with the Let's Plays, because it feels so much easier to just go on with that, because I can just sit down, just play the game, just make some silly comments while I'm doing that, and there is much less editing to do with that. Much less, pictures I need to compose because the pictures are just moving by themselves on my screen. So it's very tempting to just go on with that. But no, I know that I started with that, and those Let's Play videos, I'm still not sure how good the reception will be. But yeah, that is where I started. So I do want to keep going with those, keep doing those at least once per week. So you will keep seeing these videos eventually. You will keep seeing a little bit of them at least once a week. But the Let's Plays might still continue at least for a little bit, until I see just if people are really watching this. But without further ado, let's get to the topic that I wanted to talk about today. And as we're going back to the world building, to how I fixed quote-unquote World of WarCraft for a TTRPG, I want to go back to the topic of Kalimdor and the Night Elves today. We haven't talked a lot about it because I haven't done a huge lot with them, but there are still some big changes that I have done with the plots and the setting there that adjust a little bit what happened to them. And let me preface it by saying that Night Elves in World of Warcraft really got shafted. Like, they really got the short end of the stick in World of Warcraft, because, at the start of the game in vanilla WoW, even then they start getting a little bit shafted, because, when we start, they get shoehorned into the Alliance. Because early on, during the design of the MMO, it has been decided that they must make two factions to engage in this fake tribalism. That they must make those two factions and must shoehorn all playable races into those two factions. And the Forsaken and the Night Elves really suffered on that, because they had to somehow fit the Alliance and the Horde. They made like this very short story, like almost novella, that explained how Night Elves joined the Alliance, but they really never fit into that, in my opinion. Like, they were even kinda closer to the Horde, because Thrall's reformed Horde was more about nature, more about getting closer to nature, and the Night Elves were all about nature, so like, I really don't see how they fit into the Alliance, besides seeing the Alliance as the good guys, and the Horde as the quote-unquote bad guys. Like, besides that, I don't see how they fit into the Alliance. So as one of the core parts of my design for the world was that there were at least four primary factions, besides like things like the Scourge or the Burning Legion. The four primary factions in Azeroth: the Alliance, the Horde, the Sentinels, and the Illidari. And the Forsaken and the Blood Elves joined the Illidari eventually, while Night Elves kind of organized their own faction. Because Night Elves at the start of the game are really quite powerful. They hold like half of Kalimdor, and they're really powerful enough to have their own faction. And even in Warcraft 3, you see other races and creatures that are kind of a part of their faction. Furbolgs, for example, are one of their ancient allies that are closely aligned with the Night Elves, or were closely aligned before everything has gone down to hell, and before so many Furbolgs got corrupted. So, you can easily build a Night Elf faction there. And sure, there's not that many races, like playable races, to do there, but you can definitely do that. Like, you can definitely do like faction with Night Elves, with Furbolgs, some of their other allies as presented in Warcraft 3 were a chimera, which aren't sentient. The chimera aren't exactly a material for a playable race, Like, I'm not going to make Sasquatches a playable race, but you can easily pull out something like the Dark Trolls, which have also been seen on Hydril and which also were used to defend Mount Hydril from the Burning Legion. You could add them there. You could pull out some kind of race based on the Ancients or Treants to also give us a plant race. But whatever we would do in an MMO, isn't very relevant to a TTRPG, because in a TTRPG anyone can do anything. Like any member of any race can go to any faction, and sometimes they will have more difficulty joining it, sometimes they will have less difficulty, but ultimately a TTRPG is about the players and what the players want to do. So if a player wants to do, an orc who joined the Sentinels out of, remorse for the trees they cut down during the Third War, and they had to do a lot of stuff for the Night Elves to allow them to join, and now they are part of the Sentinels. Or maybe they're an ambassador from the Horde who is working with the Sentinels. So all those like justifications for player races are not very relevant, very important in a TTRPG, because every character is an individual who has their own story and can do pretty much anything they want to do. But you can easily build a faction out of the Night Elves, out of the Sentinels. So I did make Night Elves their own faction, independent from the Alliance or the Horde. And they still hold much of the northern Kalimdor, with all the races. Of course, there is another race that could be seen as playable, that's the Keepers of the Grove and the Dryads, the Cenarian race, or Children of Cenarius, however you want to call them as a whole race, because we've never really gotten a canon way of referring to all of them as a one race. There are also very interesting creatures that Warcraft 3 introduced, which of course have, like, in an MMO would have difficulties, like the same difficulties as the Centaurs. But again, we're talking back to the TTRPG that I have done. I have done some changes to the plot related to Kalimdor and the Night Elves. Some that came out of the necessities of a TTRPG, and some that, one of the core parts of my game was that they started it a little bit before World of Warcraft begins and a little after Warcraft 3. One of the core parts was that they were able to change stuff. They were able to prevent some bad stuff from happening. So we were actually present there when Fandral Staghelm calls people to a meeting in Oberdeen. I keep forgetting which Night Elf city in Darkshore was the starting one. We get called back to a meeting in Oberdeen when Fandral presents his idea to plant Teldrassil, because we start before Teldrassil is planted. And we know what happened with Teldrassil, with the nascent corruption that was sitting in there. We know what happened there. We know what happened with Fandral and his dreams of his son. So we were able to act on that, and when we get to Mount Hydril, when we see the seed that would become Teldrassil, we actually worked to purge that seed out of that corruption before it could be planted, before it could grow slightly corrupted. And we purged this satyr that No, it wasn't Xavius. It wasn't Xavius in the end, because there was a son of Xavius. We did it as a son of Xavius called Abraxas. I want to say that was what I called him. It's been a while for us. And this son of Xavius planted the seed of corruption in the seed that would become Teldrassil, and we were able to purge it with the help of our very powerful Dragon and allies, and Varrock himself, the Varrock Crusher, the demigod leader of the company. We were able to purge the seed, but we also discovered the whole plot that Fandral was doing with the Morrow Grain. Doing with the Morrow Grain to keep Malfurion asleep in the Emerald Dream, in the Emerald Nightmare. So we went back to Ungoro Crater to ostensibly to gather that Morrow Grain, but really we uncovered the whole plot he was doing there, stopped the satyrs there too, and I actually did it so that the satyrs corrupted like the seed in Ungoro in the middle of the crater on that volcanic hole area, and that seed grew out in front of us into Il'gynoth, and we were able to fight and confront Il'gynoth, who also received some prophecies about things that I was going to do a little later. And now that I realize, I think I haven't really delivered on all the prophecies that I have done back then. I'll have to get back to it, check what exactly I prophesized, and maybe return to it. These videos really make me realize some of the stuff that I was going to do and then never done that because the game just went a different way. And, it might be good for my game because of that. But anyway, we stopped the whole plot with the Morrow Grain, and we were able to unmask what Fandral was doing. And we actually followed back into the Emerald Dream to face this vision of his son. And then it turned out the vision of his son was being sent by Hakkar, the Soul Flayer, which, as I believe I mentioned in some of the previous videos, that I made Hakkar tied with the whole Nightmare plot and with Cthulhu. And Hakkar is now on the team Cthulhu, corrupting the Emerald Dream, because he's a Loa tied to the Emerald Dream, and he's evil. So he wants to see that corruption, to see the dream shaped into something that resembles more of his idea of what the world should be like. Nightmarish, because he likes people being sacrificed, he likes people being in fear, because that's the kind of stuff that feeds him as a god, as a Loa. So we haven't done a lot with Hakkar since then, but we will be returning to that not too long in the future. But anyway, and then after we've dealt with Fandral, and after we've dealt with the Hakkar plot here, we returned to wake up Malfurion, and when he woke up, he decided that the tree of Teldrassil would still be planted, but he wasn't going to ask for that blessing of the aspects, because he believes that Night Elves should accept being a part of the world now, that they can't just look haughtily from outside, and that they should integrate with the world around them. So Teldrassil was still planted, but it never sought that blessing of the aspects, and thus the Night Elves are not becoming immortal again, will not become immortal again, and they will actually eventually turn back to the same kind of lifespan that like Blood Elves or High Elves have. And you could say that is also like hurts the Night Elves a little bit, but I like the theme of these immortal beings that have to accept being a part of the world and have to accept this mortality. I like the theme here, so I think it serves the Night Elves better to expand a little, to develop a little in a different direction than they were before. The Night Elves in World of Warcraft only got more shafted since then. I don't think I really need to go on to explain a lot about what they've done in BFA and in Shadowlands. Shadowlands. Like, remember the scene when Elune is like summoned into the body of Tyrande, and she speaks to her sister, the Winter Queen, and she's like, I don't understand. I sent you a lot of power. I sent you a lot of power in the form of letting all my holy people get slaughtered. So what happened to that? Oh, so the sister says, they all went to hell. Oh, oops. Like, how dumb does it make Elune look? Like, okay, Elune didn't know what was going on in the Shadowlands. But she knows, at the same time, she knows that there is a drought in the Shadowlands and that her sister needs more power. So she has to know something is going on in the Shadowlands. So she doesn't check. She just lets her holy people get slaughtered en masse. She lets the whole tree burn. And then when it is discovered what happened, she just goes, oops. Like, how dumb does it make her look? Like, how badly got Night Elves got shafted. Like, in another scene in Shadowlands with the Night Elves, when Tyrande is about to kill Sylvanas, she's strangling Sylvanas with her hands, and Elune, like, withdraws her power in that moment. Why? Why, Blizzard? What was going on in that scene? What the hell, Blizzard? So, Shadowlands was very bad for the Night Elves, and they tried to, like, fix it a little bit in Dragonflight. Like, and not really fix it, they just gave them a new tree and a new capital. But it's still, like, so many Night Elves just died completely pointlessly, and then went to super hell in Torghast. Like, was that really necessary, Blizzard? To not just kill them, just send them to, like, super... Who hates the Night Elves so much in there? Who hated the Night Elves so much in there? Like, what the hell happened there? After the Nordrassil was ruined, and after they lost their immortality, and they had to accept their immortality, that is the development they need. And then work on that, build on how they adjust to that mortal life. And Fandral plot was great because, it gives us some nuance. It gives us some moral nuance with Fandral himself. And it showed us a Night Elf who didn't want to accept that mortality and who tried to fight against that mortality. And that was good. That was great. Fandral plot was great. I loved that. And also, he was on our side, but he was still kind of an asshole. So... we had this guy that was on our side but wasn't a good guy, and it gives us a lot of that nuance. That plot was great, and I built on that and worked on that, and sure, I got Fandral imprisoned earlier, but that's because one of the core themes of my game was, preventing the problems, preventing the mistakes of the previous timeline. So Fandral was imprisoned. But a few years later, I want to say years, I would need to check just how much time exactly passed really between those two times. We're now doing kind of a little on the side, we're doing the Might of Kalimdor, so like Cthulhu's Awakening, and Kiraji, and the Silithids are everywhere, and we needed a new leader. So I gave like a proposition, like the Night Elf leaders and the Orc leaders were giving a proposition like who should be leading the Might of Kalimdor, and Fandral was a proposition, but because the players and their characters fought against Fandral before, they decided not to recruit Fandral, not to wake up Fandral from that barrow den, and they instead opted for trying to recruit Jarod Shadowsong a little earlier in the timeline, and we did that. Jarod is now leading the Might of Kalimdor instead of Fandral, which is, a little bit of a loss that we're not doing more with Fandral, but that was the player's choice, that was the player's decision, and that is what you have to honor as a game master. And because, I did like Fandral and his role in the plot, and how he showed one facet of the Night Elf society that didn't want to adjust to the new times. We haven't done a lot more with the Night Elves beyond those plots because, like I said, the game really went off in a completely different direction, has gone a lot more multiversal. has done a lot of cosmic stuff since then, crossovers and stuff. But of course, as I believe I mentioned in the very first video, the tol'vir are also one of the ancient allies of the Night Elves, now in this timeline. So, and yes, they do fit the alliance a little bit more in that they worship the sun. They have like paladins and priests, so they the normal priests, not priestesses of the moon. So they fit the alliance a little bit more in their whole approach. But because they were still allies of the Night Elves in the ancient times during the War of the Ancients, the tol'vir are now part of the Sentinel faction. And if I ever built like some kind of Warcraft 4, in StarCraft 2 maybe, if I built like some kind of Warcraft 4, then tol'vir would definitely show up as a part of the Night Elf faction. And I would have to make a whole Lilidari faction basically from scratch, using like the tiny bits and pieces we got from in the Frozen Throne. That anyway, I'm not doing that right now. I am focusing on the playthrough first, and we'll see what happens with any map making later if I learn a little bit more of the map editor. Anyway, I think those are the core things that I wanted to talk about regarding the Night Elves, and there's probably a lot more to talk about, the things that I have done about the topic that didn't really fit into what I was doing here, and I'm already running on at over 20 minutes long, so I shouldn't be sitting here for much longer talking about it. But if you want to hear about any other specific parts of the Night Elves storylines, any other zones in Kalimdor, let me know in the comments below. I will probably continue with some other parts of Kalimdor and talk about like maybe like some small bits of lore or history that I added in those 10,000 years, because you can't have just 10,000 years of nothing happening in Kalimdor. 10,000 years is the time that happened since like the last ice age here on Earth. Like it's been thousands of years of unwritten history that we lost because it happened before we started writing, and then all of our known civilization rose since then. Civilizations rose and fell in the time that in the history of Kalimdor, as written in the canon, like nothing happened. Nothing we know happened. So I did add at least a few little bits and bobs here and there for the history of Kalimdor. But that would have to be a topic for another video. And that will be it for this one. And if you'd like to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe, because YouTube does this weird thing where it like starts suggesting the videos to people only after like 3 days, which is weird, but that's what YouTube does. So, but it presents the videos earlier to the subscribers. So if you want to keep those videos here and seeing those videos when they are released, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support the channel, I don't have a Patreon, but I have a Ko-fi page that should be linked in the video description below. That should be it for today, and I hope to see you next time.